I mean, you're 26 years old, and I've covered plenty of players who didn't seem like they figured the ego part out until their 30s. I mean, who taught you about why that's important and to handle it that way?
I think I'll say life. Usually, I'm gonna tell you this. Usually, when from my experience, right? Like when I think about like, oh yeah, I did this. I'm so great. I had 30. I had 25, 10, and 10, or whatever the case might be. Because you're gonna think about that. Oh, we won this and that. Usually, the next day you're gonna suck. Simple as that. You like the next few days you're gonna be terrible. And I figured out like a mindset to have that like when you focus on the past, that's your ego. I did this. Beat this team 4-0. I did this in the past. I won that in the past. And when I focus in the future, is my pride. Like, yeah, next game 5, I do this and this and this. Right. I'm going dominant. That's your pride talking. Like it doesn't happen. Like you're right here, and I kind of like try to focus in the in the moment, in the present, and that's humility. That's being humble. That's not setting no expectation. That's going out there enjoying the game, competing at a high level. And I think I've had people throughout my life that helped me with that. But that's a skill that I've tried to like perfect it, master it, and it's been working so far. Yeah. So I'm not gonna stop.
Guys, I am currently live with Get Like Coop and Mike Korzemba on our Laced Up Podcast YouTube channel. If you guys want to pop in, talk to us about basketball, and just react to what we just saw, a link to that's going to be in the description down below, or just type in Laced Up Hoops into your YouTube search tab. In addition to that, we're giving away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel, and we're also going to give away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X once Laced Up gets to 40,000 subscribers. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I am overcome with a roller coaster of emotions in regards to this NBA Finals series. Because on one hand, I can't even explain how happy I am for the Milwaukee Bucks, which, by the way, don't worry, it's accountability time for me in a few. I'm going to definitely beat myself up for some takes I made at the beginning of the season that clearly didn't hold true. But at the same time, I don't think Chris Paul is ever going to have an opportunity like this for the rest of his career unless if he takes a significant pay cut. And it's a shame because when Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns went up 2-0 in this series, a part of me already had an idea that, okay, I've been here before, we've seen this before. Typically when Chris Paul went up in a series in the past, the thing that typically holds him back is the teams that he would face against would adjust and eventually come back against his teams. Now, obviously, during his time with the Houston Rockets, unfortunately, he sustained an injury at probably the worst point that he possibly could have sustained an injury throughout his entire career. But in this situation, I think the Milwaukee Bucks just did a masterful job adjusting to the Phoenix Suns, and the momentum was just on their side way too much from the get-go. From the moment Giannis Antetokounmpo blocked DeAndre Ayton on that alley-oop attempt, which might be one of the greatest defensive plays that I've seen in the NBA Finals since LeBron James's chase down block of Andre Iguodala during the 2016 NBA Finals, all the way to, in my opinion, a move that I typically would have thought was a horrible decision, the alley-oop that Drew Holiday made to Giannis Antetokounmpo. It just seemed like the Bucks had all the momentum from that point on. And right when the Phoenix Suns had the opportunity to take the momentum back to their side in Game 5, unfortunately, the Milwaukee Bucks were able to win that game and put them in a situation where they could close out the series at home. Now, I'm going to say something that might get me a lot of heat, and I don't blame you guys if you hate me for saying this, but I believe this might be an opportunity that's very fleeting for both sides. If you look at what the Milwaukee Bucks had to endure to get here, they were able to beat the Brooklyn Nets, but obviously the Brooklyn Nets weren't at full strength. They crushed the Atlanta Hawks, and who knows what a potential potential matchup versus the Philadelphia 76ers would have yielded for the Milwaukee Bucks. Meanwhile, when you look at the Phoenix Suns, not to take anything away from them, but of course they faced off against a Los Angeles Lakers team that didn't have Anthony Davis during their final game. They faced off against the Denver Nuggets without Jamal Murray, and then they faced off against the Los Angeles Clippers without Kawhi Leonard. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the Phoenix Suns. What I'm trying to say is this might not be the case next year. They might be going up against more healthy teams, and it might be very difficult for both of these teams to make it back to the NBA Finals, which is why this year's NBA Finals series was so remarkable, because I feel like a part of us all knew this. And after many of us were questioning Giannis Antetokounmpo's legacy after a loss to the Miami Heat last year, when many of us were asking him why wasn't he defending the best player on the opposing team during the Brooklyn Nets series, and of course the series against the Miami Heat last year, Giannis Antetokounmpo answered the call when his legacy was on the line this year, averaging a remarkable 32 points per game in the NBA Finals alone, and throughout the entirety of the playoff run, averaging 29.2 points per game, 13 total rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game off of 57% shooting from the field and 18% shooting from three. Giannis, stop shooting threes. Like, that's what the defense is hoping you do whenever they go up against you, my man. What's remarkable about this entire body of work is Giannis Antetokounmpo decided to go against what most modern NBA stars were doing over the past decade when he signed with the Milwaukee Bucks this offseason. And I absolutely decimated him for this decision. What, you're gonna sign with the Milwaukee Bucks now that they mortgaged their future for Drew Holiday? You're gonna form a big three with Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and yourself and try to take on the likes of the Brooklyn Nets, which weren't formed at the time, granted, but I was writing Giannis Antetokounmpo off as a person that was probably going to retire from the NBA without a championship at the time, and it looks like he proved me wrong. What's remarkably impressive about Giannis Antetokounmpo right now is if you compare his first 8 years in the NBA to players like LeBron James or Kevin Durant or even the great Kobe Bryant, Giannis Antetokounmpo already has 5 All-Star appearances, 1 NBA All-Star Game MVP, 3 All-NBA first teams, 2 All-NBA second teams, a NBA Defensive Player of the Year award, 3 NBA All-Defensive first team appearances, 2 NBA MVPs, and of course, a NBA championship. And the reason why this is so impressive is he did it while remaining on the team that drafted him despite them being a smaller market team. This puts him in a category that I think is very difficult to attain as a modern NBA star. I think he's entered the Dirk Nowitzki tier of superstar where he remained loyal to his team. He endured one of the most difficult playoff runs of his entire career and ultimately won a NBA championship. I don't necessarily know what the future holds for Giannis, but this one NBA championship to me, at least as a fan, means so much more than a team that decided to form a big three or a player like Kevin Durant that decided to join a super team to win his championship. And that's not a knock to Kevin Durant, that's not a knock to LeBron James that formed a Miami Heat big three, but you have to admit this is infinitely more impressive than what it took to win those championships, at least in my opinion, in a very even series in my opinion. Giannis Antetokounmpo put up a performance that made me reminisce about Shaquille O'Neal during his dominant years with the Los Angeles Lakers, as he is the first player in NBA history to have 3 40-point, 10-rebound games in a NBA Finals series since Shaquille O'Neal. Now, that's enough gushing over Giannis Antetokounmpo and how great he was in this series, and it's time to give some proper credit to each and every role player on this team. The first is Chris Middleton, and I honestly don't think Chris Middleton gets enough credit. There's been multiple games throughout the series where he took over at the end of games. Giannis Antetokounmpo typically defers to him in isolation situations, in late game situations, and Chris Middleton has always delivered in those points. But Drew Holiday, a player that I personally really like because he went to my alma mater, we're both from UCLA, he went to high school like 20 minutes away from where I live. The trade for Drew Holiday, when it happened, in my opinion, I thought was by far one of the worst trades of the entire offseason, with all due respect. And if you don't remember, the trade was the Milwaukee Bucks sent Eric Bledsoe, 2 first-round picks to the New Orleans Pelicans, George Hill went to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and of course, eventually RJ Hampton found his way to Denver, and in return, they got Jrue Holiday. And at the time, I was saying that it was a ridiculous trade. It makes the Milwaukee Bucks marginally better, but I have to admit, Jrue Holiday filled his role beautifully. He absolutely shut down Devin Booker. Well, you can't necessarily shut down Devin Booker, but he definitely slowed down Devin Booker, and his biggest highlight play obviously coming at the end of Game 5 when he was able to strip Devin Booker and then run a fast break and throw an alley-oop to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Needless to say, this is definitely one of my favorite NBA Finals series that I've ever seen, because this is probably one of the most even NBA Finals that I've ever seen. And this is coming from a Laker fan that saw his team win a NBA championship last year. I actually enjoyed watching this series significantly more because it was so even. It wasn't a year where I knew the Golden State Warriors were going to win. It wasn't like last year where I felt like the Los Angeles Lakers were significantly better than the Miami Heat. So a huge congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks for betting big on themselves, betting big on their roster, betting big on Giannis, and for Giannis trusting the Milwaukee Bucks and in return winning a championship. Now let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. As for the Phoenix Suns, where they go from here remains to be a huge question mark. The very first question is, what do you do with Chris Paul? Do you sign him to a huge contract extension after what happened this past year, making it all the way to the NBA Finals despite him getting up there in age? Your nucleus is Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. You have tremendous role players in Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges. You definitely have your coach in Monty Williams, but what do you do in the offseason in order to give your team an extra leg up to potentially win a NBA championship next year, or to remain competitive against teams that might not be as injured next playoffs? DeAndre Ayton is most definitely going to get a max contract extension. Chris Paul is either going to accept his player option or opt out and potentially sign a 3-year, $100 million contract extension. I could assume that Devin Booker is happy with where he is currently, as this is the most team success he's had in his entire NBA career. As a matter of fact, this is the most team success that every single player on that roster, I guess aside from Jay Crowder, has ever had in their NBA career. So if you're the general manager of the Phoenix Suns, what do you do next in order to really improve this team? Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. And of course, if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, congratulations. This championship is without a doubt probably the most impressive championship that has ever been won, in my opinion, in the past decade. Well, actually, to be fair, I would say it's the 3rd most impressive championship. I would put this after LeBron James's 2016 NBA championship and Dirk Nowitzki's NBA championship win against the Miami Heat Big Three, because the Mavericks had to go through hell in order to even make it to the NBA Finals. They had to beat the defending champions in a playoff series, and then they had to, of course, beat the Miami Heat Big Three, despite them not being a super team. So I would rank this 3rd amongst how difficult it was to win a championship and how impressed I am by it. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.